Frank has a copy of the agenda if you need him to walk through that.
Sure. Yes.
Hey, John, Don. All right, I'll hang up. That's it.
Are we still there?
Yeah, we're all still here. Amber's in the process of connecting. John said he's dialing in right now, so we're going to have everybody.
Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, Amber.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm on audio only.
No worries. How you feeling?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
What time is it, Don?
Mayor, we still have about 4 minutes to go.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll come on right before 6 and just do a basic introduction, then turn it over to you, and you can take the meeting and run.
Okay.
Jason, good to see you. How are you? All right. All right.
Hey, Dawn, FYI, my computer, I don't know if you heard me earlier, is acting out. So I'm using Session, so that I don't know how to change the name on there. So it's me, but it has his name on there.
No worries. No worries at all.
Okay.
It's the future last name anyway.
Dale,
It's true.
come up. Okay, what'd you say?
Amber's vote is going to be to extend the date.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and we are doing a Zoom meeting again. I got on a little bit smoother this time around. Every day's better along these lines. I'm going to leave everybody unmuted at this stage of the game, so if you can make sure you are unmuted, so when you speak, you're heard. I'll go ahead and turn it over to the mayor, and Mayor, it's your meeting.
Thank you very much, Don. Welcome. Another meeting. This is Monday night. Time is, as Don said, 6 o'clock p.m. straight up. Now then, what I'd like to do, Frank, since you're there in person, I would like for you to read the agenda and carry it through.
The call to order, April 6, 2020 at 6 p.m. Village Administrator, call the roll, please.
Mayor Blanchett,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Coachman,
Here.
Alderman Bell,
Here.
Alderwoman Dankert,
Here.
Alderman Cole,
Here.
Alderman Coggin.
Here.
Mayor, all members are present.
Very well. Let us pray.
Frank, I think he wants you to read the ordinance, the caption.
I'm going to pray first.
Oh, well, that's not on the agenda, Mayor.
So it's now on the agenda.
All right. Okay.
We give you thanks this day, and we ask that you be with us. Give us wisdom and foresight, and we will bless your name. Amen. Okay, go ahead and read it.
Yeah, Frank.
One item on the agenda, consider approval of an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, amending ordinance number 2020-01 to order the next general election of the village for the purpose of electing the mayor and 2 aldermen for 2-year terms each, modifying such order, postpone the election from May 2nd, 2020 to November 3rd, 2020, and providing for the following: finding of fact, amendment, repealer, severability, codification, effective date, and proper notice in meeting. Don?
Yes, sir. Mayor, members of the board, this item is on the agenda tonight for, I believe, the 3rd time we've had a discussion on it. As you know, a couple of weeks ago, we received an initial advisory from the Secretary of State's office indicating that, and this came shortly after the governor had issued a proclamation, that basically opened the door for communities who had May elections to move those to the next regular uniform election date, which would be November the 3rd. It was not strongly worded, that first advisory, and I think the board at that stage of the game said that they were interested in waiting to see what conditions were like on April the 16th, and then they'd make a final decision on whether to move the election or not. Subsequently, we have received correspondence from the Secretary of State's office with a very firmly worded advisory that says you shall move it. They've interpreted the governor's comments and his restrictions, and determined that that means the elections need to be moved away from May, and that the next regular date available would be November, per the governor's previous directive. So we talked about this last week at the meeting, and the decision was to go ahead and move forward and hold a special meeting today and consider an ordinance to move the election in November. So it's before you for consideration today.
Okay, questions to Don, please.
Don, is there a way, this is Rodney, is there a way the ordinance can be structured that would allow that if the state were to prescribe a date earlier than May 3rd and allow cities and villages to move to it, that we would be able to take that into consideration and move as long as we were within the right time frame for notifications?
Right. Probably the cleanest way to do that is to go ahead and approve it with a November, with a caveat, understanding as part of that motion that if an earlier date is considered that's acceptable to the board and we're able to meet the time requirements, that we would potentially move to that. You'd have to make a separate decision at that time. I think in reference, what you may be referencing is Waco, for example, has decided to move to November, but they also have asked that the governor be requested to consider potentially moving the election to July with the runoff, which is the new runoff date that the governor moved to. They, in fact, I believe, submitted their letter today to the governor's office. No word on what the governor will do at this stage of the game. So, Rodney, I think what you do is you approve this ordinance and then have as part of that motion, we recommend approving this ordinance with the understanding that if a earlier date becomes available and is authorized by the state, that the board would reconsider that date. So what would happen in that situation is if he comes back and says July is an acceptable date, then what you do in that situation is you would consider an ordinance calling it for July.
So Don, this is Cole Longman. So in short, if we did that amendment to this ordinance, we would have the door open for both dates.
what you would do is you would not make it part of this ordinance. You would simply make it part of the motion that would indicate that we recommend that we should approve this ordinance to move it to November. We understand that your date becomes available per the order of the state.
Okay. Somebody in the back, John.
I mean, I just want to be a little. I'm the peon in this whole thing, but certainly I feel like I've done a lot of legwork as far as.
Don, do you have a way to shut Cliff up?
Of what chapter 49?
He's out.
Thank you.
Always want to shut him up.
John, will you go ahead and ask your question again?
Yeah, and what I was getting to, Don, is if we make the motion, on the back burner to move to a July date, that would essentially leave the door open for both dates of election. Is that correct?
Right. What we're saying is the appropriate move would be to adopt a May election, a May to November election move, adopt the ordinance as it's presented, with the understanding that if an earlier date becomes available, that the board will consider an ordinance moving it to the earlier date if it so chooses.
Okay, what would be the time frame where the governor would get back and say yea or nay or something like this? You got any idea?
I think it's going to have to be pretty quick because there's a notification and there's a full process leading up to an election where they have to allocate certain days for ballots and those type of things. They have to set up it's a whole new election calendar that would have to go into effect. So my guess is that the July election, the early voting would probably start in very early July, if not late June. And prior to that, you've probably got 4 weeks of lead up to that as far as dates, as far as mail-in ballots and all of those type of things that would have to come into consideration. So it's going to have to be pretty quick if he's going to do it. And I can tell you that I can tell you that the discussions we've had with the Secretary of State about that is, and the county, was very quick to point out the fact that the July election is actually not a county-run election. It's run by the parties, and the county's indicated that they don't have a position one way or the other on that. But they said they questioned whether the governor would do that. But anything's possible. There are several cities that have asked for that. So I think you ought to leave the window open. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, please?
So Don, the question I have is, should we have had a opportunity for the public to speak at this meeting, or is there going to be one this time?
I think it's worded in such a fashion as in any agenda item that they could speak on it. It's up to the leadership and the board whether they want to hear public comment. It's not a formal public hearing per se. That's not required, but they can comment really on any agenda item if the board allows them to.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know who has dialed in, but I think we ought to give an opportunity to whoever has an interest to give a 3-minute discussion like we usually allow it.
It's fine, Don. Give him 3 minutes, and we'll take 4 telephone calls.
Okay, real quick before we go there, Rodney, did I answer your question okay?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Representative Buckley about if the July 14th date would work, and I know he was presenting that, but it came back problematic from the governor's office that they just felt like there were issues with it being mixed with party politics, though, an election's election, so figure it out. But I don't want to put anything too big on the plate of the state because they mess it up anyhow. So let's just go ahead and, if they give us the opportunity, I just wanted to have it there to use if they so prescribe it. But
Yeah, I just tack it on to the back of your motion, not make it part of the ordinance, but tack it on to the back if the board agrees to reconsider. Okay, so at this stage of the game, I would ask anybody who is on the line that wishes to offer public comment to unmute yourself, and who would like to go first if they have a comment? Cliff, do you have a comment you'd like to make?
I did not know that was on the video. I mean, that was on the audio.
We won't give the contents of that arrest warrant. Don't worry.
I thought I had muted this thing.
We did.
Without a phone call the whole time? Did y'all hear that?
We did it.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I really did think I had muted this. No, I don't have any public comment. I was just wanting to watch this. I apologize for that.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute you then.
Thank you.
All right, how about Erica?
Second call for public comments. Second call for public comments.
Thank you for offering. I don't have any public comment at this time. My husband and I were driving through town and thought it was a really cute city, and we're interested in potentially buying some property on that strip, and just wanted to see what politics are about in Salado. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Glad you're with us. Anybody else have a public comment?
Third and final call for public comments. Comments are closed. Don, I have a couple of questions I'd like. What did it cost us this time to financially? What did it cost us to delay during this period of time?
Well, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1,800, but we're going to try our best to get some of that money back. We don't think they started programming the machines yet, but the paper products we have in hand, so we're on the hook for that. But if we're on the hook for anything at this stage of the game, it could be as much as $1,800. We have not placed the ad yet. As a matter of fact, we're waiting to do that based on what your decision is tonight. So we're holding that ad. We need to let people know if we can run the ad for a May election or not, but we're talking probably at most, Mayor, about $1,800.
Okay, if we did this in July, would this money be counted toward it, or would we have to pay another $1,700, $1,800?
You know, I think you're probably going to be, you're going to probably have to pay some, there may be a repetitive cost in there. It just depends. We're going to have to, it depends on the parameters that are set that the July election is allowed. When the governor allowed the elections to move to November, he set up parameters with the Secretary of State on what things could be used and what things couldn't be used from the May election. And the same parameters would need to be discussed and finalized for the July election. So I really don't have that answer for you. I think it's possible you're going to be out a little bit more money. But
if we go on to November, from here to November, how much more money is that going to cost us?
Well, the November election will actually be not cost us but a fraction, because it's a county-run election, and supposedly the cost that we're going to be in that situation will be the ad, and we'll be at the cost for a small cost for programming. The cost is a very small cost because it's part of the overall ballot, so we'll pay our portion of that. Our pro rata should be much less than.
Okay, then I'm going to ask the final question.
So in November, long story short, Mayor, November election will be much cheaper.
I'm sorry?
Long story short, yeah, in brief, a November election will be cheaper than a May election or even a July election.
Then my question is, why are we going to fool with this? Why don't we just go ahead, put it in November, and let it be? We've already spent enough money on this thing. If it's a political reason that you're either afraid to get votes or you're not going to win or whatever it is, if it's political, that's not good enough. If we put aside the health and welfare of this community over the fear of votes or the fear of losing, we have made a tremendous mistake. And that is what the community is thinking when we did last time. I can't tell you if it's 50% of the community, 5%, but I will tell you that is what they think. Are there any more?
What you just said, Mr. Mayor, I'm hearing the same thing. I'm echoing the same thing at my end.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, I have a question.
Are we having discussions at this point?
Are we what? Could you repeat that?
I said, are we, is this open for discussion now, since those were statements, or are we in questions right now?
No, we're not open for discussion. I asked the final question. I asked all of them in the form of a question, Amber, and that's it. So,
I have a question.
somebody else wants to talk now. Who wants to talk?
I do. I have a question. Hey, Don, can we follow in Waco's footsteps and write a letter to the governor and request for the July election just like Waco did?
If that's your direction, you could do that, yes, sir. Our recommendation, as I said before, would be to adopt the ordinance and then have us write the letter to see whether they'd be open to it, just like Waco's done. If that's your desire.
Do we have to put that into the ordinance, or will you do that based on our instruction, or how do you want to work that?
Based on your instruction, my recommendation would be, if that's your desire, that you go ahead and adopt the ordinance that's before you that moves it to November, so you know that path is set if all else fails, and then submit the letter, and if the governor says, yes, we're open to July, then we'll bring you back another ordinance to move it to July, and y'all make a vote at that time.
That works for me.
If you're going to do that, I'd rather do that.
Hey, Don, this is Cole. We're kicking this can down the road over and over and over again with the same discussions over and over again. We haven't peaked in Bell County yet for the virus count. The governor is saying delay it. The Secretary of State is saying delay it. And why don't we just wake up and delay the damn thing and get it over with? People are sick. They're not going to get well. This ain't going to get better by June. It ain't going to get better by July. And we're just delaying the inevitable.
Well, John, if you read the proposed ordinance, it does delay it to the 3rd of November.
Then why don't we just do that and get it over with?
Excuse me, I'm speaking. But if we go ahead and put the provision in that it's safe to vote in July the 14th, which has been a consideration that we have said from day one, then we want to take that opportunity. And as opposed to what the mayor was saying, there are a lot of people out here that are wanting to get able to vote in this election.
Do you have a calendar?
Yeah, to do that, we need to go to November so everybody feels safe.
Is there any other questions to Don, please? I'll entertain a motion, please.
I make a motion that we accept the resolution to move the election date to May the 3rd, with the understanding that if the state prescribes an earlier date, the council will have the opportunity to consider that date moving forward.
And that resolution meaning an ordinance, right, Rodney?
I'm sorry, yes.
And I'd like to add an amendment to that. The amendment B is that we direct the city administrator to write a letter similar to the one at Waco and request the opportunity to move it to July the 14th.
We need a second on the first motion before we can amend it.
That's true. Is there a second on that? Rodney's
I second it.
motion's been made and seconded. Now,
And I offer the amendment.
okay.
I accept the amendment.
Okay. Now, what is the motion with the amendment?
Well, the motion, if I can restate, the motion with the amendment is that the motion has been made to approve the ordinance, moving the election from May to November, with the understanding that if an allowance is made for an earlier election date, that the board would consider that earlier election date at that time. In addition, the board is directing the staff to send a letter to the governor's office similar to that sent by Waco, asking for the ability to hold its general election in July as opposed to November.
Okay. Who was talking, Dan?
That was me, Don.
Okay, Don. Thanks. Okay. Discussion.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, say, I'll just go down the list. When your time comes, it's either yay or nay. Mike?
Yay.
Rodney?
Yay.
Frank?
Yay.
John?
Nay.
Is that nay or yay?
It's a no.
Okay.
Amber?
Yes.
The motion passes. Don?
That's it.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Is there a second? Motion, the call session is adjourned.
That's
Good night, everybody. Be safe.
All right, y'all stay home, stay safe, be careful.
Goodbye.